Hi, I am Nicole Dowling. I am the branch chief for the Developmental Disabilities branch here at CDC, and it is such a pleasure to see you all here tonight and to welcome you to CDC. As you may know, CDC estimates that 1 in 68 children has been identified having autism in communities across the United States. The 1 in 68 is so much more than just a number. It represents many families and communities, just like ours, who are living with autism. Our speaker tonight represents one of those families. Daniel Share-Strom comes to us from Ontario, Canada. We were lucky to see his TED Talk, and if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend you look it up after tonight's program. It's called Dear Society, Signed Autism. And after seeing the TED Talk, we hoped there might be a chance we could entice Daniel to come down to our little awareness event program here in Atlanta, all the way from Toronto. And so we put an invitation out to him, and we were so delighted that he said yes, and that he's here tonight with his mother. We are so honored he's here and that he's agreed to share with us, more importantly, his perspective on living with autism and his experiences, particularly around transitioning as an adult with autism and the challenges and joys that he has experienced. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Daniel. Daniel is quite accomplished. He's an accomplished writer. He's a professional speaker. He's an Asperger's advocate and educator. He's the co-founder of a company called Autism Goggles, which is dedicated to crafting impactful articles, videos, and workshops that help bring the experience of living with autism into sharp focus. Moreover, Daniel holds an honors degree in communication from the University of Ontario Institute of Technology. And we say this every year, but it really is true, that at CDC we are committed each and every day to doing all that we can to understand autism. But nothing we do could ever be as enlightening or as powerful as the words and experiences of individuals who are living with autism, who are willing to share those with us. So with that, I will turn it over now to our esteemed guest speaker, Daniel Share-Strom.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Nicole. Yeah, I've been doing this for a little while, but this is actually my first time spreading to the States. Sorry, that's a little CDC humor. So I'm grateful for what I've achieved so far in my life, which is actually not in spite of being autistic. Autistic is actually the unique way that I've been wired, and so anything that I do is inextricably linked to that. Yes, I'm a kind and patient person, and I love humor, and I'm a university grad, a writer, a former video game journalist, and a wannabe actor. But as I try to keep up with the typical world, I can be the same clumsy, anxious, socially awkward, disorganized, forgetful, fashion-challenged insomniac with illegible handwriting and poor eye contact that I ever was. Though surprisingly, with all those charming selling points, I am still single. I'm a man with autism, trying to find his way in a world that honestly has little patience for autism. It's ironic. We're called inflexible by a system that's very set in its ways. We're accused of lacking empathy by those who don't know the depths of our suffering, and told that we don't understand the perspective of others by people who really don't get the autistic experience. So I've been trying to change people's minds about autism since I was a teen. Through writing and speaking events with my mother, our focus is on rebranding autism and moving perceptions of ASD from fear and apprehension to understanding and acceptance, to awareness that autism is just another way of being human. It's 2017, and still we're poorly understood and rarely accepted, resulting in a groundswell of autistics unable to cope with the transition to adult life. The relentless effort to make us something other than who we are can have devastating results. Our primary interactions with most people are corrective comments telling us that the way we are is wrong. People pathologize everything that we do and subject us to therapy to exorcise the coping mechanisms that we use. Is it any wonder that we might act out or shut down or give up trying? Today I'm going to share my perspective of living with Asperger's, or what's now called ASD Level 1. But I'd like to start by expressing respect for non-autistic individuals, non-verbal autistics. I once delivered a workshop called What Doctors Don't Tell You and Teachers Don't Know to about 50 families, addressing dozens of things that affect my life on a daily basis, like anxiety, sensory processing, grooming, academics, loneliness, sleep problems, etc. So I had a Q&A session at the end, and after that, one family remained, an elderly woman and her severely autistic, nonverbal, middle-aged son. And during my presentation, he sat in his chair, rocking back and forth, and turning around and around the toy truck that he brought with him. And it seemed like he wasn't paying attention. So they came up to me and my podium at the end, and his mother held a laminated sheet of the alphabet in front of him. And he started pointing to letters and spelling out a message that she then read aloud. Thank you so much, Daniel, for telling people how we feel. We have so much in common. I stood silent and still for many seconds, trying to process what was going on. And then when I figured out this new reality, the man and I were able to have a great conversation for the next several minutes. It was a profound experience. A man likely assessed below the first percentile was expressing himself so eloquently, and there I was in the 99.9th percentile, unable to find my words. So from that day to this, I have assumed that everyone who is nonverbal can be considered competent, and I know that their participation is vital in order to get an accurate understanding of autism. Now, having said that, getting back to my mission to rebrand autism, last spring, as Nicole said, I had the honor of doing a TED Talk at York University in Toronto and share some ideas. And it was a really exciting platform. And as you heard, the CDC found me to be your keynote today through that event. But basically, I was invited to speak today because I'm autistic. I'm also 27, single, and, I kind of agreed because I thought there might be some young video game-loving women in the audience tonight. No? I know it's kind of a weird way to meet someone, but come on, it's not that different from an eHarmony ad. Hi, I'm Daniel. I hate toothbrushes. Sweet. I hate toothbrushes, loud noises, and washing my hair. Call me. Yeah, I understand. Not the greatest sales pitch, right? And yet, this is what happens to autistic people. We're summed up by the things that cause us problems. And what if that's how everyone was introduced? So I want you to think about the one or two things about you that you'd rather keep private. So let's say you're Brenda, the award-winning writer and loving mother of two, or Michael, the school teacher who volunteers at the animal rescue. And now let's say I introduce you to someone like this. Say hi to Brenda, the disorganized control freak, and Michael, the lazy, overdrawn couch potato. Yeah, you see what I'm getting at. Society evaluates autistic people by our distance from normal. The things that we do that are outside of the ordinary get added to a list of things to fix. And since we are different from typical people in how we learn, communicate, interact with others, and experience our environment, the list can get long. And the consequence is that kids on the spectrum grow up feeling broken, not believing in themselves or their futures. So awareness of autism-related difficulties is important, but what we're really eagerly waiting for, what we crucially need, are acceptance and understanding. Acceptance of the different ways that we experience the world. So right now, things are challenging. Let me tell you a story. I graduated university in 2013 and had a hard time finding work. I was accepted into a program that helps people like me to find a job. I spent hours sitting with the job developer as she worked to understand my strengths and challenges so that she could make a good employment match. For strengths, she learned that I'm a writer, a public speaker, a workshop facilitator with an honors degree in communications. And as far as challenges go, she said, I explained that I move slowly and I struggle with motor skills. The results of things called slow processing speed and developmental coordination disorder. So basically what that means is I'm what you'd call clumsy. It's hard for me to do work with my hands, like anchoring a steak with a knife and cutting it with a knife. And then, with a knife, eh? Over the next 4 months, I checked in with her weekly, and nothing. Then she calls me all excited. She found a job for me to apply to. I was pumped. That's great, I said. What is it? Anticipating an entry-level office or communications type job, and she was so happy to tell me, it's prep cook in a kitchen. Okay, awareness, yeah, understanding, not so much. So I said, well, thank you so much for finding me this opportunity, but I can't do that job given my fine motor challenges. Is there any way you could find me something that uses my communication degree to some extent? And she says, Daniel, that's perfect. You'll be able to communicate with the other staff in the kitchen. Yes. With unemployment rates for autistics up to 80%, she may not be the only supportive professional whose good intentions are hindered by a lack of autism understanding. So think about our schools. They're aware of autism, not surprising. As we said earlier, the CDC's stats say that 1 in 68 people may be on the spectrum, so that's not surprising. We have some wonderful teachers, but they are not required to have any kind of autism education to teach us, and that doesn't always work out so well. So for instance, because of those fine motor problems I mentioned, I've used a laptop for all written work since I was 10 years old. And when I was in grade 9, a teacher asked me to write a unit test with pen and paper. And I didn't do very well on that test, even though I was usually an honor student, because I can't compose responses well that way. So my mom asked that I be allowed to retake the test using my school-issued laptop, and the teacher said no. Not understanding that assistive technology eliminated my barriers to learning and put me on a level playing field, he wouldn't allow it. And supports are denied for reasons beyond a lack of understanding. I've been doing autism workshops for 13 years, and I frequently hear from parents who say that the school won't give their kids supports because there's not enough money to go around, or there are other kids who need it more. Well, here's what I think. The challenges of speaking autistics will be recognized when we get the right supports and respected and supported. And the strengths of non-speaking individuals, as I mentioned earlier, will be honored and appropriate curriculums and supports will be developed. All autistic children will get what they need in school year after year, which will help prepare them for adult life. Now, if we can agree that there's work to be done, where do we start? Well, I have 6 exciting ideas. Number 1, let's consider changes to teacher degree programs to include understanding the needs of autistic learners. Number 2, let's develop individualized curriculums to match our strengths and then tailor the speed and volume of work to match the pace of the student. Number 3, let's shift understanding with public awareness campaigns featuring autistic individuals and highlighting our strengths and diversity. Number 4, let's have both speaking and non-speaking people featured in those campaigns, shattering the notion that those who can't speak have nothing to say. 5, let's make changes in law to ensure that autistic students get what they need in school year in and year out, and that supports are not determined by how the board decides to spend its budget. And finally, let's support employers who develop autism hiring practices. With research suggesting autistic employees are loyal, productive, and good for the bottom line, everyone benefits. So that's a short list, but an ambitious one. Can we do it? We can. These kinds of changes, based in understanding and acceptance of autism, will mean future generations of autistic individuals will be able to grow up with their self-esteem intact, believing in themselves, and confident in a future that can include them. Perhaps they'll be able to experience introductions that don't humiliate them, but instead honor their humanity. And maybe they'll go something like this. Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm a writer, a workshop facilitator, and an autism advocate. Okay, so society doesn't really know what it means to be autistic. It's not very nice how we're treated, and it's just not fair. But seriously, it's time to turn that casual awareness into action. This is not just a tisk, oh, isn't it sad that those poor autistic people are understood? Tonight, let me share the consequences of not understanding and accepting what autism can mean for those of us without intellectual delays as we transition to adult life, and provide some ideas for change. So let's start, because society, your lack of concern here, and I mean the general you, it's killing us. As adults, this is what we have to look forward to. Those sky-high unemployment rates I mentioned, a life of dependency and social isolation punctuated by chronic anxiety and depression, an average life expectancy 18 years lower than average, and death by suicide at 9 times the rate of the rest of the population. Not acceptable. Why are these things happening? Well, good news, everyone. The answer is not so elusive. Can I suggest why we have failed to raise autistic children to become adults with competence and confidence to live their lives to the fullest? Well, since I'm from Canada, I'm going to put this in the most polite way possible. Autistics are not being taught what we need to learn in order to succeed in adult life in a world dominated by non-autistic people. Thus, both the problem and the solution lie with our schools. So while it's critical that we use all of our resources as a society to help autistic people who are struggling with unemployment, loneliness, anxiety, and depression, I want to examine the positive changes that we can make in our schools to ensure a successful transition to adulthood for those children who are still in school and those who will be one day. As it stands now, schools misinterpret the unique qualities that can accompany autism. They assume that if we can speak and have average intelligence, then there's nothing wrong with us. Well, yeah, we never said there was anything wrong with us. We said we're autistic. There's a difference. And really need respect and programming in school that is diagnosed around the core features that got us diagnosed. Social communication difficulties, restricted interests, sensory challenges, and our unique ways of thinking, for example. Our differences from the ordinary are invisible and don't affect other people so much, so they're ignored, missed, or not accepted. The thing is, differences can extend to many areas of human functioning, and when these are understood and accepted, we can do quite well, thank you. And when not, our mental health and self-esteem can take a large hit. I'll try to explain. So autism is a pervasive development disorder, which means that we can develop on a different timeline than others in areas like communication, social interactions, managing our behaviors, things like that. So this is why we need to be taught differently and may take longer to learn, but teachers lack the training in order to teach us based on our learning and processing differences. The speed and volume of the curriculum, along with the sensory and the social demands of school, mean the whole thing can just get overwhelming. These challenges commonly mean that we are corrected, redirected, chastised, and embarrassed in every setting by everyone dozens of times a day. We have eyes on us all the time, constantly catching us when we make a mistake. And with this constant oversight, we learn from a very young age that, again, who we are is not good enough, that our basic instincts are wrong. Our peers and staff roll their eyes at us, exasperated, frustrated, and angry. And the teachers don't understand our sensory experiences that make us, say, get too close in your personal space, the social approaches that lack finesse, the executive functioning issues that might mean that we can be late or disorganized or forgetful. And so, from a young age, many of us go to bed at night worrying about all the social blunders we've made this day and wake up the next day wondering how we're going to screw up again. What a way to live, right? Unintentionally, schools are chipping away at our self-esteem. Fortunately, we can turn this around by determining to do better and considering new ideas for change, including some of the points that I mentioned earlier. We can change teacher degree programs to include understanding the needs of autistic learners. We can provide individualized curriculums to match the students' needs, and we can ensure that supports are available year in and year out. So these programs for teachers will mean that all of them will understand our unique way of thinking and how to accommodate for things like slower processing, perseverating on things, awkward social approach, challenges in understanding nonverbal language, sensory and motor differences, and things like executive functioning challenges. They'd also learn about many other features that can impact our day-to-day experience. So that can mean what it means to have a communication disorder. They'll know the long and short-term impact that difficulties in social interaction can have on us, anxiety, depression, isolation, and work hard to facilitate friendships and increase our social currency in the schools. They'll be experts in approaches that work best for us, so they'll become fluent in what's called errorless teaching, which is because we know that we can be very sensitive to being edited or corrected or told to do something again, so they'll find ways around that. They'll know that a behavior issue is really a lack of understanding issue or a lack of support issue. They'll be kind, calm, and very creative, knowing that the more rigid and inflexible the student, the more flexible the teacher must be. Now, despite lacking expertise in autism, many teachers do go above and beyond for us, and I'd like to add that when these teachers work closely with our parents, the school experience can be much better. Thank goodness for parents, honestly. Luckily for me, in my darkest hours, when I felt like life was just too hard and I just felt like I couldn't go on, I had a case manager, a crisis counselor, motivational speaker, cheerleader, teacher, social convener, educational advocate, fashion advisor, occupational therapist, and executive assistant who wouldn't let me give up on myself. That person is my mother. She always found a way to pull me back, give me hope for the future, and help me to stand on my own 2 feet. Parents, seriously, all the difference in the world. But getting back to my high school years, school was very hard for me. Because of anxiety, mornings were always a gong show. My mom had to prompt me through every step of my daily routine, often stopping to help me through panic attacks. And I often needed assistance of school staff just to be able to enter the building. Many days, I didn't think I could go on. On one such day when I was 14, I sat in my vice principal's office, knees drawn up to my chest, rocking and chewing the neckline out of the t-shirt that I'd stretched over my legs. And I felt the flush of prickly heat on my face. As I sat with vacant gaze, unable to move, unable to speak, my mother, with one word, told Mrs. Redpath what was causing the problem. School. School demands were too fast and too much. The homework, the noise, the chaos, the bullies, they were more than I could cope with, and I could see no way out of my wretched situation. So my VP first gently offered support for my suffering and then got serious. So she held out her hand like this and said, "Daniel, you look at this opportunity and you see the word stop. From where I stand on this side of the sign, I see options. If you're having a rough day, come and see me. I'll give you a quiet meeting room to relax and do your work. And if you're having too tough of a morning and can't get to school, you're a great student. Take the day off and take care of yourself." And then she added, "No matter what problem comes up, the three of us can find a solution." As she spoke, I slowly unfurled, stopped chewing, stopped rocking, and looked at my mother with something other than fear in my eyes. That meeting was a game changer. I had options. Through 4 years of high school, I stayed home due to anxiety only twice, but I, of course, continued to suffer with it. The options she gave me relieved stress and made a big difference. So yeah, there are many creative, caring educators doing what they can for those of us on the spectrum within an imperfect system. Luckily, there are many such teachers, but finding them should not be a matter of luck. Let's work with our governments to change the requirements for becoming a teacher so that anyone allowed within 10 feet of our autistic children knows how to help us. Once we change those programs, we'll have the staff to be able to deliver individualized curriculums. These will match the speed and volume of work with the student's ability and focus on developing their strengths and supporting their areas of need. The current status quo couldn't be further from this model. Right now, diploma-bound autistic students are forced to do curriculums that are made for typical kids. Juggling multiple responsibilities, trying to pay attention amid the sensory overload and the social demands can be overwhelming, and that's not going to help them when they're trying to learn how to transition. It can leave us exhausted and anxious, or worse. Well, to paraphrase author Paul Collins, the problem with trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole is not that the hammering is so much work, but that in the process, you'll destroy that peg. So how would these individualized curriculums work then? Well, here's some ideas. Mandatory courses like math, English, phys ed will be decided on an individual basis. These personalized and flexible curriculums will allow students who are experts in American history but can't do math, or who are exceptional writers who can't do science, to still be able to thrive and to do well in the areas that they're great at. And they'd be able to go to post-secondary if they chose. You know, we don't want the brilliant mathematicians and the great minds of our time not to be recognized because they couldn't graduate high school with the typical curriculum. Provide engaging credit courses every year to address the core differences in autism. Courses that teach body language, emotional recognition, facial expression, and perspective taking. That'll help us to address the social communication differences that are so critical to adult life. Sensory and motor issues are not a sidebar in autism, as are up to 90% of us have differences in these areas that can contribute to our emotional states or behaviors. So if we create credit courses that teach us about things like sensory processing and self-regulation, it can give us valuable tools for managing our emotions in the world. Now, I have a lot of sensory issues. I was a real hand flapper as a kid. You know, anytime I was really excited, I'd be going flap, flap, flap like crazy. But I've learned to suppress it by doing other things with my hands, clenching my fists and that kind of thing. So sometimes, though, if I get really excited, if something really happens, I just go crazy and I start flapping like there's no tomorrow. And I guess I am going to have one wild honeymoon one day. Employability skills will be taught every year of high school. pairing typical teen mentors with autistic teens in work placements. No autism curriculum would be complete, of course, without teaching life skills. Many of these credit-based courses would go a long way to helping us. It is essential to address areas where we lag behind. Personal care, meal planning, cooking, housekeeping, money management. Yeah, as adults, we're kind of going to need to know that if we're going to be successful. Our lack of skill in these areas is preventing successful independent living. If we develop courses also that are based upon our interests, we're going to have more success. We do well when we see the value in what we're doing. And challenging us academically in areas of extreme interest can help us prepare for future careers. So things like the history of video games, or meteorology, or anime art, animal care, Star Wars. Tie the work somehow into things that we're interested in, and we're going to get a better result. And as an added bonus, there will be peers with common interests in those classes, so that will help in initiating social interactions. Our areas of specific interest are very common in those of us with autism. I'm sure many of you know that. And if nurtured at home and school, it can go a long way toward helping us develop a career. So that's how I became a public speaker, for instance. I showed this knack early in life, and it's kind of morphed into this. Here's the family folklore. I was a painfully shy toddler who avoided toys, other kids, and barely spoke. When I did, it was hard to understand me because of poor articulation. And one day I found a toy microphone at a garage sale. I marched to the center of the driveway, stood tall, and belted out a rousing rendition of Blue Suede Shoes. In a big voice, enunciating every word. I was 3. Who knew I could sing? Well, not my mom. She was stunned, and then somewhat frustrated in her attempts to get me to repeat the performance later. She soon came to understand that the microphone was the magic. Like Michigan J. Frog, I just stood there like a lump, blinking my eyes and staring straight ahead. And once she realized that the microphone was the key, she found every opportunity to get me on stage. Weddings, funerals, anniversaries, that kind of thing. I spoke wherever I could, and speeches were written, and I delighted in delivering them. Soon, she was using my strength to help me get through school. In grade 9, when academic and social demands were getting a little too overwhelming, it upset me that teachers seemed afraid of having someone with autism in their class. Either that or they were afraid of dealing with my mom. I haven't quite figured that out yet. Seriously, autism parents rock. Anyway, I was really looping on this, and it was really increasing my anxiety. Enter my special interest and my strength. My mom suggested that I teach my teachers what I needed them to know about me, my strengths and my needs. So if I could create a PowerPoint presentation to that effect, she would get them into a room and I could present it to them. The school supported the idea 100%, and she definitely had my attention now. The staff appreciated the training, and I was able to do this every semester through all 4 years, culminating in addressing the entire staff in my final semester. My public speaking and interest in explaining autism grew from there. And over the past 13 years, I've done keynotes, professional development in elementary schools, high schools, colleges, universities, spoken to doctors, teachers, students, everything. It's really important that all children, especially autistic children, have the opportunity to develop their areas of interest. Some of the finest, most creative minds in the world are on the spectrum. We are represented in the arts, in science, in literature, and technology. And I'm quite confident it'll be someone on the spectrum who finds the cure for cancer. I mean, who else has the focus and the creative problem-solving ability to sit in a lab day in and day out, year after year, to make this happen? I'm sure the CDC knows no one like that. Expert autism teachers and tailored curriculums make sense then, but they must be consistent. We must ensure schools give autistic students the supports that they need and make sure their budgets reflect this. Right now, parents beg for crumbs of support. And when they finally get something that works, when the student is finally doing well, the supports get taken away. Why? Well, because challenging behaviors disappear when we get the supports that we need, and so people think there's no more problem. Well, the support gets pulled, and everything goes back to how it was. So I'm not sure how your school boards operate here, but back in Ontario, each school board presents their education laws in their own way. The supports vary from board to board and school to school, and so what do? Well, what we can do is make changes in law so that law has to be interpreted and applied equally. Let's take responsibility away from any teachers that don't understand autism. And when a support is challenged, let's leave it to a panel of autistics, parents, and professionals who understand autism to make a decision. Make sense? I think so. By ensuring that we're taught by those who understand our differences, who deliver curriculums that are right for us and in the right way, we can graduate students who can thrive as adults. We can and must start now. Let's reimagine our school supports to make sure future generations of autistic children have the life skills and social communication skills to transition successfully and thrive in adult life. Of course, it would be naive to think that our education system is the only one that needs an overhaul. Family doctors, for instance, get very little education in autism, besides specifically how they can diagnose us. And they often give parenting advice based on what's appropriate for typical children. That doesn't work for us. And that's a speech for another day. Now, before I say goodbye, I wonder if you could do something for me. So for anyone who's able to, I'd like you to stand for a second. Thank you. Now, take one small step to your right. Great. Now back to your left. Okay, perfect. Have a seat. You know, my mom has been telling me the whole time I was writing this that if I want to make an impact, I have to move my audience. So, nailed it! Thanks, everyone.